Good morning, everybody. I am so excited to be here with my colleagues from the Congressional Progressive Caucus Executive Board. And today, after more than a year of negotiations, the House Democrats are going to send the Inflation Reduction Act to the president's desk for signature. This landmark legislation marks the largest ever federal investment in climate action, putting the United States back on track to cut carbon pollution by 40% by 2030, with renewable energy technologies saving the average American family $1,000.25 a year and creating 9 million jobs. It invests roughly $60 billion in environmental justice to frontline communities and billions to utilities and rural co-ops so that rural co-ops can retire coal-fired power plants. Progressives have been very clear from the very beginning that we don't support the expansion of fossil fuel leasing, but critically, as we dug into the details of this bill, independent analyses show that their impact will be far outweighed by the bill's carbon pollution cuts. That doesn't mean we're not going to stay extremely vigilant as we go forward. The Inflation Reduction Act will immediately also extend affordable health coverage for 13 million people. It will cap seniors' annual drug costs at $2,000 per year and insulin at $35 per month. For the first time ever, we got our toe in the door to take on the price gouging by Big Pharma. For the first time ever, Medicare can begin negotiating drug prices. And in a huge win for progressive economic policy, this bill is paid for entirely with a 15% minimum tax on corporations, taxing of stock buybacks, and investing in the IRS to go after large corporations and wealthy individuals who cheat on their taxes. As President Biden promised, it will not raise taxes on any family making less than $400,000 a year. We are at the Progressive Caucus heartbroken to see investments in care, in housing, immigration, workforce, and more left on the cutting room floor. And it's particularly outrageous that Congress was poised to cap the cost of insulin for everyone with private insurance at $35 a month until Republicans stripped it from the bill. And we expect this bill to pass without a single Republican vote, even though the legislation is supported by nearly 3 out of 4 Americans across the political spectrum. I am so proud of the role that the Progressive Caucus played in this fight. From the beginning, progressives have fought tooth and nail to advance the full scope of the president's economic agenda. And let's be clear, we are here because progressives held the line to turn that agenda into a House-passed piece of legislation. The Inflation Reduction Act that we passed today draws on the provisions from the Build Back Better Act, and together with movement activists and volunteers from across the country, we insisted that this Democratic majority deliver. Young people and climate activists made congressional climate action mandatory. Patients, people with disabilities, and allied advocates gave Democrats the power to finally take on Big Pharma and the wealthiest corporations. We have won the argument for the president's full economic agenda that we passed in the Build Back Better bill with 99% of congressional Democrats and the American people supporting it. Now, we just need a couple more Democratic senators to make the rest of that agenda a reality. So I'm incredibly proud of the Progressive Caucus, and I know that we are not taking our foot off the gas. We are going to make sure, both with our executive action slate in the remaining months, as well as after the midterm elections, when we expand our majorities in the Senate, that we get the rest of this done. And now it's a great honor to introduce somebody that I've worked so closely with over the last 6 years of my tenure in Congress, somebody that helped build the Progressive Caucus to what it is today, our CPC Chair Emeritus, Congressman Mark Pocan.
Thank you, Pramila. Today is a big win for the American people and a big loss for the DC special interests, especially in Big Pharma and Big Oil. This bill really is built off of the hard work that we did around Build Back Better that continued to this finally getting done. And if there was one group in Congress that, as you know, last fall held out as hard as we could to continue the conversations, to get what we're doing today done, it was the Progressive Caucus. And I want to say a special thank you to our chair, Pramila Jayapal, because not only did she continue with the perseverance necessary, but she had conversations with, let's say, some of our more colorful members in the Senate to help us get to this point today, and that is a big win. We're putting people over politics as we make sure that finally people can save money on costs when it comes to healthcare and energy costs as we're experiencing worldwide inflation. This country right now is dealing with it by addressing these issues, by allowing us to be able to negotiate for prescription drug prices through Medicare, capping senior costs, giving people more access to health care, and finally addressing some of the issues around climate change while creating jobs right here in the United States with the energy solutions for the future. So this is really a big day, and I think it's important that as we have this big celebration today, we remember the one group that was the strongest behind this, that held out the longest and made sure the conversations happened to this point, and that was the Progressive Caucus, and I'm very proud to be a part of that caucus. Next, I want to introduce one of the other people that I looked at. As Pramila said, she and I worked closely during her 6 years. My 10 years, I have been extremely fortunate to have had the counsel and the friendship of our other chair emeritus who's with us today, Representative Barbara Lee.
Thank you very much. I want to thank you, Chair Emeritus Mark Pocan, for that introduction, but also for your tremendous leadership on so many fronts, and also for your magical abilities. And this is a magical day. And I want to say to our chair, Pramila Jayapal, I have to thank you for your tenacious leadership, the months of putting the pressure on as it relates to Build Back Better, but also your negotiations. And I had the privilege to work for Congressman Ron Dellums, a great warrior. And I remember when the Progressive Caucus was formed, and I served as co-chair for, I think it was about 6 years with Congresswoman Lynn Woolsey. And I just want to say to you, you have realized, Chair Jayapal, the dreams of so many who came here to Congress for the strength and power of the Progressive Caucus to be seen, and you've done that. So thank you all very much. And let me just thank all of the millions of volunteers and activists and advocacy groups who laid the groundwork for these wins. This is your victory as much as it is ours. This country has never worked for everyone equally, never. Right now, seniors are just one devastating diagnosis away from paying tens of thousands of dollars for medicine that they need to survive. When this bill passes, however, no one over 65 years of age will need to pay more than $2,000 for prescription drugs a year. That's life-changing. It's life-affirming. Right now, teachers and nurses pay a greater share of their income taxes than Amazon or Facebook. When this bill passes, corporations will finally have to contribute 15% of their billions of income to our country. Right now, lower-income families and communities of color face the brunt of pollution and climate change. When this bill passes, we will be on track to cut carbon emissions by 40% by 2030. The long-term decarbonization will make a difference in our communities, both at home in the United States and throughout the world. But let me be clear, this bill is not perfect, and I am outraged by Republican senators' opposition to key provisions like a $35 cap on insulin prices. You know who that affects disproportionately? Black and brown people. They're putting politics over people. Families still face huge burdens, from housing to childcare to immigration. We have a lot left to get done. But thanks to the relentless, and I mean relentless, determination of the Progressive Caucus and progressives around the country, we are poised to deliver real, tangible improvements in the lives of families around the country immediately. And this is our moral imperative as Democrats. And with control of the governing majority, that should never be overlooked. So I look forward to heading into the Capitol and to vote yes on the Inflation Reduction Act of 2022 and put the American people over politics, finally. Thank you all again. And now let me ask my colleague, a former co-chair of the Progressive Caucus, another emeritus who chairs the Natural Resources Committee, my friend who I've known for many years through many struggles, Chairman Raul Grihal.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Emeritus, you know, a word that kind of just hangs in the air. But very proud of that title, very proud of being a member since I got to Congress, 20 years, the Progressive Caucus. Its evolution, and to the point that it's at, is something that all of us are very proud of. And throughout the legislation we'll be voting on today, that imprint of the Progressive Caucus and the work of the chairwoman and the leadership of the caucus at this point in history, you can see it. And it's the imprint that makes this piece of legislation viable and right for the American people. We take a serious step forward to deal with the climate crisis. We take a step forward to continue to invest in the American people and continue to control their cost of living and reduce their cost of living. We take significant steps to begin to create jobs and opportunities for people in this country. And as my friend just said, it's not perfect. There were provisions that were left out in the Senate discussions and negotiations that we and Build Back Better as a caucus, and not only as a Progressive Caucus, but at a Democratic caucus and majority in the House, wanted and passed. So those provisions are not there. But the bulk and the imprint that is there is something that merits our support and certainly has mine. And as we go forward and we continue to discuss the issue of climate, one of the things that I think all of us should be conscious of, the side deal and what that means to, this is one piece of legislation, not involving the sides deal. I think that needs to be studied and dissected in terms of what it means to the environment, and we're not creating, with this bold step forward on climate, contradictory steps that are going to weaken that step forward on climate. And so we'll look at that. I will have an opinion. Others will have an opinion, but I think it's an important piece. But today it's a celebration, both of effort, tenacity, and the fact that this is what the American people want, and this is what they need, and we're responding to that. So thank you very much. Let me introduce Congressman Raskin. I think Jamie has been, since he got here, a leader in thought and in action for this Congress of ours. I'm very proud to serve with him, very proud of his leadership, and very proud of the role that he has played consistently to save, preserve, and protect this democracy of ours. With that, let me introduce the Congressman.
Thank you, Raul. Thank you, man. Hello, good morning, everybody. The heart of the word progressive is progress, and today the Progressive Caucus brings a lot of progress to America. And the progressives are the heart and the lifeblood of the Democratic Caucus and the Democratic Party. And today, the Democratic Party is the party of democracy, and the Democratic Party is making democracy work for the people. We are in a civilizational emergency with climate change, with record forest fires in the West and record drought throughout the Midwest and record flooding and erosion in the East and hurricanes and storms of record velocity across the South. And the Democratic Caucus is standing up today to say that we need to act, and we're going to reduce by 40% greenhouse gas emissions by 2030. What a remarkable victory that is for the American people. What a great victory that is in the struggle to preserve our species and to keep a planet that's habitable for human beings. I also want to say that there is tremendous progress in this legislation in terms of anti-corruption. The fact, I'm just going to give you one example of it, but the fact that for more than a decade now, The government has not been able to negotiate lower prescription drug prices in the Medicare program with Big Pharma is an absolute scandal. And it all goes back to a rider that was slipped in by Billy Towson, the Republican chairman of the Energy and Commerce Committee, who said that Medicare would not have the same power that the Medicaid program has. It would not have the same program that the VA has to negotiate lower prescription drug prices. So essentially we have the monopoly power of Big Pharma dictating the prices to the people, and that's costing Americans $25 to $30 billion a year in extra costs. And so today, when we vote and we pass the Inflation Reduction Act, we're getting rid of that bit of special interest legislative corruption that was put in long ago, and we're going to allow for the first time the Medicare program to be negotiating free market style with Big Pharma for lower drug prices for the people of America. And I'm very proud that that is part of this, just as we're limiting the amount of out-of-pocket costs that any individual American on Medicare will have to pay to $2,000 a year. We are limiting the costs of insulin, which will be an absolute lifesaver for millions of people in the country who are struggling with the exorbitant costs of insulin in order to address their diabetes. That is not an optional or discretionary drug. If you've got diabetes, you've got to take your insulin. And so we're saving people from being jacked up thousands and thousands of dollars beyond what they're able to pay. So I'm very proud of what we're doing today, and I'm proud of the leadership of Pramila Jayapal and Mark Pocan and everybody who has kept us together with the slenderest of margins in the House and the Senate in order to pass this monumental achievement today. And now I'd like to introduce my great friend, a great leader from Illinois, Representative Marie Newman.
Well, good morning, everyone. Happy Inflation Reduction Act Day, right? Let me start by thanking these amazing leaders behind me. Without them, we would not have this bill, and it isn't about just the last year and a half of work. It is years and years of work that took us to get this. They led with integrity, fortitude, kindness, and grace. And with that, we have this bill that does amazing things. It reduces emissions by 40%. It makes the tax system a little bit fairer. And I have to tell you personally, the fact that as many people in this country that do not pay the appropriate amount of taxes, and it's going to get a little fairer for everybody, is honestly my motto in life. And forget about campaign slogans and all that nonsense. I want everybody's every day to be just a little bit better. And this is going to make everybody's every day a little better, 100%. I want to thank my climate partner friends, all of our climate partner friends back there, for being amazing and working hard and pushing us, because that's what activism is about, is pushing us. And we push the Senate, right? And then we all push the president. So we keep doing that, right? But I will say, understand that this bill got to where it's at because we lost in the Build Back Better battle. And I will tell you personally, I was devastated, enraged, and very frustrated. But with great leaders like this behind me and the entire Progressive Caucus, we were able to get to where we are today. So today, be incredibly thankful for these folks, being incredibly thankful for the Congressional Progressive Caucus, and be thankful for every American, because Americans pushed us to do this. We pushed the rest of our colleagues, and we got this done. So with that, I hope everybody has an amazing day, and everybody's every day is a little better today. Oh, and I'm sorry. Let me introduce the Honorable Mark Takano. So good to have him too.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Marie. Thank you, Pramila Jayapal and Chair Emeritus Mark Pocan, and Chairman Grijalva, who chairs our Natural Resources Committee, was also the co-chair of the caucus when I got here in Congress in 2012. Let me just make just note that 16 of the standing committee chairs are members of the Progressive Caucus, and the imprint the imprint of the Progressive Caucus on today's bill has been left in part by these progressive chairs. They wrote the original, the authorizing committee chairs wrote the original Build Back Better That's how the process works. I share the lament that that much has been cut out, but today is a celebrating of what is in this bill. You know, Harry Truman, when he accepted the nomination for re-election, it was a Democratic convention. It was a partisan speech. He says, "We're going to beat those Republicans in November, and what's more, we're going to make them like it." This bill, the American Republicans across the country, the Republican voters, many of them, actually a big chunk of them, 3/4 of the American public, as Pramila said, likes what's in this bill. They already like it. We don't have to make them like it. We already know they like what's in this bill. And what is in this bill? We're gathered here to celebrate the passage of the Inflation Reduction Act, largely due to the progressive members holding the line and fighting to advance the full scope of the president's agenda several months ago. The Inflation Reduction Act will lower drug costs, energy costs, extend health care coverage for many people, act on climate change, and create millions of jobs across the country. And as chairman of the Committee on Veterans Affairs, I know that the VA uses its tremendous bargaining power to get drug costs lowered for veterans. We're going to see the same thing happen for all Americans. All of these investments draw on the House-passed Build Back Better bill and will allow Democrats to keep their promise to improve the lives of American families. Now, this isn't the end. We will not stop fighting for the pieces left on the cutting room floor, whether it's universal child care, pre-K, housing, immigration justice, and Medicare expansion. But let me be clear. We made the president's agenda a progressive agenda, and the full progressive agenda only needs 2 more votes to pass in the Senate. Think about that. Just a net 2% more in the Senate means we go the full distance on the progressive agenda. Thank you very much. And I now want to turn it over to my colleague from the great state of Michigan, who, in spite of everything, still has a tremendous voice, Debbie Dingell.
Good morning, everybody. I had jaw surgery. He told me not to talk. Can you see Debbie Dingell not talking? Doesn't work. I am a hockey player. First of all, I want to thank all of my colleagues behind me who are the best friends anybody could ever have and who never stop fighting for the American people, working men and women across the country. And having said that, they've talked about the health care provisions of this. I will never stop fighting until we get every American health care. When you're sick, you deserve to go to the doctor when you need to go to the doctor and be able to get the medicine and the treatment you need. We're not going to stop fighting until we get that, but we take another step today. But what I really want to talk about is I'm a car girl. You all know that. I'm a car girl. And I worked hard on these provisions. A lot of people tried to kill this bill in the last couple of weeks. The transportation sector is responsible for more than 30% of the carbon emissions in this country. And people are always trying to pit us against each other and make a fight. Well, my friend Gene Karpinski is here and a lot of other environmentalists. And a year ago, we stood at the White House after 9 months of discussion and agreed with the workers, the auto companies, the car companies, the truck companies, and the environmentalists, and set a goal for 50% sale of zero-emission vehicles by the year 2030. Now we got to make sure that we're supporting what's going to happen. And this bill does it. It's a transformational piece of legislation. It's a tremendous step in the fight. It represents the single largest investment in clean energy, environmental justice, and climate action in the history of this country. Yeah. It is. Yes. I'm really proud of the work I did on it. The auto industry has demonstrated it's ready for America to be the global EV leader. And we're not going to cede our leadership to any other country. We will lead in innovation and technology. From domestic supply chains to manufacturing to consumer incentives, the policies in this bill pave the way for the shift to electrification on all fronts. Increased investments in both the Advanced Technology Vehicle Manufacturing Loan Program and the Domestic Manufacturing Conversion Grant Program, I will admit, I helped author it, will incentivize companies to bring those jobs back home that have been shipped overseas. And there are a series of tax credits, including a clean vehicle credit, that was previously called the owned vehicle credit, or the previously owned vehicle credit, and an extension of the federal income tax credit on alternative fuel vehicle refueling property. This is going to bring down the cost of electric vehicles. Right now, too many electric vehicles are a luxury car. We can't have that happen. Now, okay, the reality is, I'm with Joe Manchin. I'm not going to decrease our dependence on China any more than it is right now. We're 80% dependent on them for the minerals. Well, we're not going to do that. And so for the short term, it will strengthen the long-term trajectory of automotive industry and respective supply chains, and it's going to reduce emissions, but few companies won't be able to access that tax credit until we're mining it here or in countries that aren't China or Russia. But it paves the way for innovation and success. My chair just left, Chairman Grahova, Jared Huffman, myself, the environmentalist, Jean's over here. We convened a table last year. We're convening another table. I'm bringing everybody together. And how are we going to get that mineral supply here? We know we got to do it. And one of the things I am worried about is that these EVs are not luxury cars that working men and women cannot afford. That's our next job, to make sure that that doesn't happen. But right now, this bill is going to put this country on a path to reducing carbon emissions and reducing these storms and these wildfires and all the damage we are witnessing. When we work together, we can get the job done. And now I'm honored to turn this over to my colleague, Mandara Jones, who always has my back, and I love him. Mandara, you do. He really does.
And I will always have your back, Debbie Dingell. Good morning, everyone. What a great day to be a progressive. Thank you all for being here, and thanks especially to my colleagues in the most effective caucus within the House Democratic Caucus, the Congressional Progressive Caucus. We kept at it. We fought so hard for so long, and we did it. We got Congress to this moment. We never gave up, and now our advocacy has paid off. We said we wanted to get back to the negotiating table and that we wanted to start with climate. Now we are about to pass the greatest and largest climate investment this country has ever seen. And we are finally about to lower prescription drug costs for our seniors. I am so proud to be part of this historic occasion, this generational legislation, and as I mentioned earlier, this highly effective caucus. Tackling the climate crisis is the greatest challenge that our generation will face. The stakes of this crisis could not be higher, especially for low-income communities and for communities of color who bear the brunt of climate catastrophe. Young people in particular can breathe a sigh of relief knowing that this body is about to take long overdue, crucial action to save our planet. We are about to lower prescription drugs, lower prescription drug costs for people like my grandmother, who had to work well past the age of retirement just to pay for the high cost of prescription drugs and medical procedures not covered by Medicare as we currently know it. We will do this by holding Big Pharma accountable, by finally allowing Medicare to negotiate the cost of prescription drugs, saving hardworking families thousands of dollars every single year. This is an example of government working for the people. Today is cause for celebration. This legislation is why you run for Congress in the first place, and Democrats are continuing to deliver on their promises. I will now hand it over to my brother in this fight, my good friend, Representative Jamal Bowman. Thanks so much.
Good morning, everyone. Peace and love. How y'all doing? Isn't this an incredible day? We should all be celebrating. We should all be making noise. It took us a lot of hard work, sweat, blood, and literal tears to get here. I mean, obviously, serving the 16th District in Congress is the honor of my life, slightly surpassing my time as middle school principal. I don't know. Working in the middle school is probably right neck and neck. But to be a member of the Progressive Caucus and to be guided by the leadership of Pramila Jayapal has been such a learning experience and just such a marvel to watch. You know, the work that went into holding the line and making sure Build Back Better was on the table and discussed and fought for. The work that went into that, the grit, the sacrifice, the determination was just tremendous to watch. And she was not alone. I want to give a big shout out to my man, Mike over here on the left, who was right there doing the work. You always got to recognize the staffers, right? But there would be no Inflation Reduction Act without Build Back Better. And there would be no Build Back Better without the Progressive Caucus. They tried to move forward with the infrastructure bill, which we supported, even though we wanted it to be better. But we knew we couldn't talk about physical infrastructure without focusing on human infrastructure. And that's what Build Back Better is all about. And that's what the Inflation Reduction Act is moving forward with, putting people over politics. Historic investments in dealing with the climate catastrophe that we are living in. Now we have an opportunity to deal with and address the environmental injustice that's been happening in communities of color while responding to the drought, the forest fires, and the climate impact that's happening all over the world. This is historic. And it's great that the Progressive Caucus is going to continue to be at the table to make sure implementation is rooted in the President's Justice 40 initiatives. Lowering the cost of living for seniors and everyday Americans is a game changer. People cannot afford to live right now. Rent is too damn high. Groceries are too damn high. Transportation is too damn high. Prescription drugs is too high. It's all too high and people are struggling. So capping drug costs at $2,000 per year is a game changer. And finally, corporations will not be able to dodge paying their fair share in taxes. We do not have a democracy without an equitable tax code, without a fair tax system, and corporations that have been paying nothing will now have to pay at least 15%. And that can be reinvested in the American economy, in the American people, and provide relief in terms of inflation pressures. So this is a huge win. We will not be here with without the CPC. We would not be here without our leader, Pramila Jayapal. And as we know, there's much more work to do, and we're going to come right back to the table to get that work done, because the next thing we need to do is hold the House, win a couple of seats in the Senate so that we could become Mansion and cinema proof. And once we do that, we can pass a true people's agenda, codifying Roe v. Wade with the Women's Health Protection Act, passing H.R. 1 and getting big money out of politics, maybe even expanding the Supreme Court like my brother Mondare has been fighting for from the very beginning. And the thing about it is, progressives work in alignment with the activists across the country who have gotten us to this point. So shout out to the activists. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And progressives work in alignment with what the American people want, period. And we will continue to do that. We will continue to put people over politics because we love the people, we love the country, and we love the planet. And we're about to save all three. And this is just one big step in that direction. So thank you all so much. I'm going to bring up my brother, Dominicano, representing Washington Heights in the Bronx, brother Adriano Espaillat.
Thank you, my friend. Thank you. Well, unemployment is low. Price of gas is going down, so that should have an impact at the supermarket. And now we're going to tax 150 greedy corporations the way they should be taxed. The economy's coming back. And we're going to make sure that inflation is going to be crushed. We're going to crush inflation like an Aaron Judge grand slam in Yankee Stadium. And so this is a great moment. And, I represent, as my brother Bowman said, the Bronx and Northern Manhattan. And in the Bronx, we have the zip codes that had the toughest COVID numbers in the country, in the West Bronx. And people died there not just because of the virus, but because of diabetes. They died there not just because of the virus, they died there because of asthma. They died there not just because of the virus, they died there because of respiratory and cardiovascular problems. And the only way you can treat those underlying conditions is if you have access to health care and you can pay for your medication. So this bill is perhaps the best post-COVID-19 recovery action that we have taken so far. It will save lives. And seniors will not longer have to ration their insulin. They're literally rationing their insulin so they can pay their rent and buy food at the supermarket. That cannot continue to happen in America. The environment. The environment. I have an 8-year-old grandson who suffers from asthma. He smells peanut butter and he breaks into rashes. He breaks into rashes. The environment is so much connected to this asthma thing going on in the Bronx where he lives. He was born in Washington Heights, but he lives in the Bronx. And so we want to help him. We want to help my grandson. We want to make sure he doesn't break into a rash when he smells peanut butter. He loves peanut butter, but he can't eat it. And so the way to do that is to invest in the environment. And this EJ provision, $60 billion for environmental justice. I was at a street on 238th Street the other morning, no trees, and the melting asphalt brought the temperature maybe to 125 degrees. And so we need to plant trees. They help us breathe. It's simple. This is not complicated stuff. This is very simple stuff. We make it complicated when we don't act. And we're acting today. And this is a progressive victory because it's an American victory. And American values and progressive values are one of a kind. They're not different. I don't know any American that wants to ration their insulin or have to pay exuberant amount of monies in co-payments or have to pay the prices for prescription drugs that the pharmaceutical companies tell them to do. So this is truly a progressive victory and an American victory. And I thank the Congressional Progressive Caucus for their leadership. Often is referred to also as the conscience. It's not just the conscience. The conscience is like an esoteric world. It's the backbone of Congress. It's the backbone of Congress. And so I thank them for their work. Pramila has done an excellent job leading the caucus, and just keep the faith. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, everybody. Huge shout out to all our activists who are here. Lift up your signs, moms, all the folks that are out there, been fighting with us. We probably have time for 2 questions, and then we're going to lose the triangle. So if anyone has, yes.
Speaker Pelosi punted the police funding bill to a later date over Democratic disagreements. What is your response to critics who say this should also have been a high priority for passage as the IRA?
Today we are celebrating action on climate. We are celebrating action on prescription drugs. We are celebrating action on corporations finally paying their fair share. One more question. Yes. Yes, go ahead.
Hi. So you mentioned today it's a celebration, but it didn't come without concessions. Several of you mentioned the cutting room floor. Of the provisions that are on the cutting room floor, what are your first priorities specifically?
really everything that's left is our priority, because well, the care economy, and there were several pieces of the care economy, are absolutely essential. We got to get women back into the workforce. We got to take care of families. When I'm out, I'm hearing about two things that people are talking about: the rising cost that is preventing them from, really realizing opportunity. One is childcare, and the other is housing. We got to invest in housing. We got to take care of our seniors and our kids, and we need to make sure there are a number of other provisions around workforce, around immigration. We think we crafted the best bill in the world with Build Back Better, and actually, so do the American people on every one of those provisions. So as soon as we get a couple more Democrats, we've made the case for the rest of the bill. I hope we don't have to give up any of it, because it is really important that we get all of it done.
Two more.
Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Great.